Hey there, it's Steve from Serious Keto, and in this video we are going to make some mayonnaise. Or mayonnaise. You know, I have a feeling that regardless of how I pronounce it, someone's going to crawl up my butt in the comment section and tell me I'm doing it wrong. So I'm just going to call it mayo. I bet you right now you're saying it out loud. Mayonnaise, 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 mayonnaise. Am I right? There was a time when I didn't like mayo. I know, crazy, right? But now I love it, and I'm pretty glad that it's on the menu for keto. The problem is, store-bought mayo generally is made from either soybean oil or canola oil. And neither of those are high on the list of good-for-you oils. Now there is olive oil and avocado oil mayos out there that you can buy, but you pay a pretty considerable premium for them. And that's why we're going to make our own. Now this video is going to have a little bit more talking in it than a lot of my videos. I'm going to kind of go a little bit Elton Brown here and talk about the science, the ingredients, and the method of mayo. Because I don't want to just give you a recipe. I want you to understand it so that you can make your own recipe and tailor your own mayo to your tastes. First off, mayo is an emulsion. It is getting oil and not oil to stick together. So if you think about a vinaigrette, when you've got the oil and the vinegar and you shake it up and it kind of blends but then it separates, that's an unstable emulsion. What makes mayo stable is the lecithin that's in the egg yolk. Which brings us to the ingredients. First we have the oil. We're going to do two different recipes, one with olive oil and one with avocado oil. If you really wanted to be super keto and create a really sort of neutral flavored mayo, you could use MCT oil too. Then we have the eggs, and you can use either whole eggs or just the yolks. I'm going to use just the yolks in this recipe because I want to save the egg whites for another application. You can use them on like some of those white bread chaffles, which I could link to up there, or my candied pecans. What I find typically in recipes is it's usually one egg or one yolk per half cup of oil. That seems to be sort of the common ratio that I see in most recipes. Then you have some form of acid. That could be lemon juice, that could be vinegar. And in terms of vinegar, up to you. It could be white vinegar, it could be apple cider vinegar. If you're feeling really classy, I suppose you could do champagne vinegar. And then we have just a couple of extra, and some people might even consider them optional, flavor enhancers. Mustard. I typically see Dijon or brown mustard. We're going to use Dijon. Some salt, and oftentimes a little bit of sweetener. That's it. In terms of methods, there really seems to be about 4, if I counted them correctly, and those are using a whisk, just by hand, whisking this together. That requires considerably more patience and arm endurance than I have, so we're not going to do that method. The next two methods are very similar, blender or food processor. To me, it's kind of a horse apiece on those. We're going to use a food processor as one of the two demonstrations here, just because my Blendtec blender, as much as I love it, one of the things I don't like about it is when you're just blending at a steady speed, it turns off after 50 seconds. I think it's a safety feature. And the speed at which you're drizzling in your oil is slow enough that it takes 2 or 3 power cycles on my Blendtec, which is just sort of a pain. I'm not going to do it. We're going to use a food processor. The final method, which has become easily my favorite method, is using an immersion blender. One last thing before we start. Most recipes that you see for mayo, because you're using eggs, want you to consume that batch of mayo within a week. Well, we're going to do a little hack here to pasteurize our egg yolks. I got this from America's Test Kitchen, and this will let your mayo stay nice and safe for about a month. That's it for the talking. Let's get to making some mayo. We're going to start with 2 large egg yolks, to which we'll add 3 tablespoons of water and 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. Whisk together until you don't see any orange streaks from the yolks. Now we're going to pop this into the microwave for about 40 seconds, stirring every 10 seconds. We're also going to be using an Insta-Read thermometer because we want our temperature to be somewhere between 160 and 165 degrees. We do not want to go any higher than that because we don't want the eggs to start cooking. 10 seconds, give it a stir. We're at 93 degrees. 118 degrees. 137. 154. And there we go. 164 degrees at about 45 seconds. We're going to pour our egg mixture through a strainer into one of these pint mason jars. And that catches any chunks that might be in there. Then I'm going to add a half a teaspoon of salt, sea salt, half teaspoon of Dijon mustard. I'm using Boca Sweet. It's really my favorite, although it is kind of pricey. So if you don't feel like using Boca Sweet, feel free to use Swerve or whatever sweetener you want. 1/4 teaspoon. Finally, we're going to add 1 cup of olive oil, and I recommend for olive oil, get the absolute lightest, like extra light variety. Otherwise, it really kind of has sort of a, well, oily taste to it. With the immersion blender method, we don't need to drizzle this in. We can just dump the whole cup of oil right into our jar. Insert your immersion blender and let her rip. You may want to tilt your blender just so that it can suck air and oil down underneath and into the blades. And that's it. We've got mayo. Immediately after blending, it may seem a little liquidy, but this is going to firm up nicely once I throw it into the fridge, which is where it's going to go while we make our next recipe. Again, we start with our 2 egg yolks, 3 tablespoons of water. This time though, we're going to use 1 tablespoon of distilled white vinegar instead of lemon juice for our acid. Whisk together until we see no more orange streaks. And again, we'll microwave for probably 40 to 45 seconds, stirring every 10 seconds until we reach 160 to 165 degrees. And then for this recipe, we're going to use a food processor. Again, we are going to strain out our eggs just to get any chunks. Yeah, we have some curds here. And once again, a half teaspoon of salt, about a half teaspoon of Dijon mustard, and a 1/4 teaspoon of sweetener. Pop on the lid, and yes, this is a very old Cuisinart food processor. I think we got it for our wedding. It's literally held together with some marine glue right here. It's not in great shape. Going to be one of my next new purchases. We'll remove the feed tube. And we have 1 cup of avocado oil, which we are going to add in a slow, steady stream over the next minute or 2. Turn it off, and then scrape down the lid and sides. And we'll run it for about another 5 seconds. Now, this does look thinner than the immersion blender method, sort of closer to an aioli than a mayonnaise, but trust me, this will thicken up in the fridge. It's been about 4 hours that the mayo's been in the fridge. This is the immersion blender olive oil mayo, and you can see nice and thick, just like I promised. The food processor avocado oil, though, that's still a little bit loose. However, here is some that I made, also in a food processor, also avocado oil. It was one of my test runs, and you can see this is nice and thick. It's been sitting in the fridge a little bit longer, I guess. Now let's see how they taste. First, the olive oil. Oh, that is so good. That is, in my opinion, so much better than Hellmann's. Oh, wow, that is good stuff. I like this recipe. I don't know that I would tweak this at all for my tastes. I rinsed off the spoon, so not double dipping here. Now the avocado oil. Ooh. This, I think, with a little more sweetener, and you've got something awfully close to Miracle Whip, although not quite as thick. I'm going to taste the one that I made 2 days ago, and it's a little firmer. See what I think of that. So, original avocado food processor mayo. Yeah, I think extra sweetener, and this is practically Miracle Whip right here. So once you start making mayo at home and playing around with the recipes, you're not gonna buy store-bought mayo anymore. You're gonna be done with that because this is so easy to make. If you want a little sweeter, add some more sweetener. If you want a little bit more tang, add a little more mustard. If you want to bump up the acidity, play around with that lemon juice or vinegar. Try different combinations of this. I kind of look at mayo the way I look at nut butters or guacamole. You play around with the ingredients, you have some fun, you experiment, it's all good. So if you think you've dialed in on a fantastic mayo, I'd love to hear what your recipe is. Throw it down in the comments below and share it with all of us. And if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and if you want to be notified whenever I release a new video, hit the bell next to it. Thanks for watching. I guess you could say I'm putting on a Mayo clinic.